everyone. Welcome back to another episode of Flipping the Barrel, a podcast where we interview leaders in the energy space to uncover and find out more about their career and life journeys. Today, we have the pleasure of speaking with Julie Flowers, the head of global talent and acquisition at Chevron. She's an exceptional leader whose career started in 1998 with over 25 years within the company. Her inspirational trajectory from the grassroots of HR to her current position exemplifies dedication and resilience. Beyond her role, Julie is a compelling speaker, a respected board member, and a dedicated mentoring coach. Additionally, she's also a certified professional leadership coach for Chevron and working towards her International Coaching Federation credentials. Within Chevron, she is also the leadership sponsor for Human Women's Network and Gulf Coast Executive Women's Steering Committee member. I had the best time with you, Julie, when we met the first time virtually, but you were just incredible. Your energy, the way that you spoke. And then I just recently watched a few of your speaking engagements, your live ones that you had recently done. And I have to say that you are definitely a compelling speaker, and I was completely engaged the entire time. So really excited about today's podcast.
Yay. Awesome. Well, thanks. I enjoyed speaking with you too, and I really appreciate this opportunity. And ironically, today is my 26 years with Chevron, my anniversary. So there you go.
That is awesome,
Julie. Well, we really look forward to hearing all the experience and advice that you can share with us in 26 years of working. And so before we get started into kind of your career path, let's go back to the beginning. You grew up in Northern California, Bay Area, and your family had multiple generations that also worked for Chevron, which is very cool. I don't think we've had anyone on the podcast that had multi-generations working at Chevron. And so we want to hear a little bit more about that. And, how did the diverse roles and experiences of your own family members working at Chevron kind of shape your early understanding of what work was going to be like? And what made you decide to also, kind of follow that family tradition and work yourself at Chevron?
Yeah, it's a good question. And I get asked this question all the time. Even my kids ask me these questions. I mean, with both my parents, my stepmother and my cousin, I'll just stick with that generation, having over 30 years with Chevron themselves. They're all retired, by the way. The only two left are me and my husband right now. Chevron literally, provided for me my entire life, right? That's all I've known from a company standpoint. And it really helped me see the ethics and values of Chevron, right? Because they provided for us. My parents enjoyed working there. My other family members enjoyed working there. And it really helped me understand the qualities that make up a good company, right? I saw it firsthand and I was able to witness it daily. And those things are things like putting the employee first, putting society first, making sure we're providing energy for the world. Those things came throughout my childhood and I saw it. Now, as a child, I probably didn't really register all of it that much, but as I got older, it really just sunk in of, man, this is an amazing company. Ironically, though, I didn't seek out to work for Chevron, though. That was not my goal in mind. Because, as kids, we don't want to go work for the family business, right? We're like, I'm going to go do my own thing. And I did do my own thing, but I quickly pivoted back to Chevron. But Chevron is like a family. Even it's a big company, it's a small family, tight-knit company too. And one example that I saw where Chevron does a great job of supporting their employees was through my father. He was so he was an iron worker, and then we moved from Southern California to Northern California, started in the mailroom, and he was able to get different development assignments as well as pursue his own degrees while working full-time. And Chevron supported that. And when you see that, you're like, okay, this is a company that cares. So I didn't go down the path to start with Chevron, but I have all those great memories and the values that I saw on a daily basis that stand out the most for me.
What really surprised me when we first talked was, in my mind, I didn't really think that you would be from California. Like when I think of generations at Chevron, especially with the way California and energy transition and everything today is, I was like, wow, California. What was the perception of Chevron and oil and gas at that time when you first, especially with your whole family being in it? Did you feel any different towards oil and gas? And was there any of those societal pressures that we see today?
It's funny because people see me as a Californian, but they also see me as a Texan. I think I have a little bit of both in me. Still diehard California girl, but I have a lot of Texas in me now too. And I think I was born to be in both those states. But yeah, it's funny. And I've got the big hair and then I got the blonde hair. So I've got both the big hair of Texas and the blonde hair of California. So it works out perfectly. And my two kids, one was born in Cali and one was born here in Texas. So I've got it covered. But as a child, and even as a teenager, it didn't really much cross my mind, big bag of oil. It didn't really register for me because I just knew this great company that my parents worked for, providing for us and all those things I talked about earlier. But as I became an adult, then I started to understand and see and hear and witness society giving us that big bag oil reputation, right? And in California, we were in the heart of the Bay Area, right? So a lot of liberal environmental conscious, which is great, right? There's nothing wrong with that. But I don't recall early on, even when I'd say I worked for Chevron, people, cringing or anything like that. It was a lot more of questions, right? Well, why do you charge this at the gas pump? Why, those kinds of things. But it wasn't a warm, fuzzy hug like you got when I moved to Texas. And it was like, ooh, you work for Chevron. That's awesome. Can I come work there? Right? So it's a completely different feeling. But I don't recall being, ridiculed or anything like that for working for, because Chevron did so much and still does in that community in California as well. So I didn't really think of you, but I think of that. But I also, how the pressures of oil and gas on me didn't really steer me away from Chevron because I knew in my heart the good company it was. So I was able to tune out societal stuff because I was seeing it firsthand. And it's hard. I don't judge society too much. I wish they'd educate themselves a little bit more, right? But until sometimes you got to see it to believe it for some people. But that's why I'm a walking commercial for this company, because I want people to understand that, yes, we produce something that could be harmful to the environment, but we do everything in our power to make sure that doesn't happen. And we do everything in our power to help the societies in which we operate in.
I love that you shared that. And it's so true. And I think so many companies are trying their best, to your point of we do have to create oil and gas and fossil fuels, but I think even now in 2024, we're doing it in our best way, or we're looking for ways to do it better and better and, kind of be part of the society and care about the planet, et cetera. So I really love that you shared that part. Something that's really interesting, I think, in your journey is that, after high school, college wasn't really an option due to financial constraints and also just like encouragement, et cetera. And this is normal, I would say, for certain people where like after high school, you just don't necessarily know either what you want to do with a career, or maybe you kind of have to work to save some money to go to college. Not everybody gets, to go to college. So can you tell us a little bit about that? And then kind of when you started to reevaluate your trajectory and also kind of looking at your friends or like, the people, your peers around you and how they were kind of, overcoming and surpassing your income. And, there's a point when you're like a young adult where you realize like, okay, I really need to figure out what I want to do next and kind of that trajectory. Can you tell us a little bit about kind of what happened during that year?
Yeah. And I always say everybody has their own journey. So we should never judge on how you get there. My path is going to be completely different than yours, and not one path is right. Now, jokingly, I will say I don't tell my kids that they shouldn't go get 2 degrees because Mama still wants them to go to college, right? But my mother only had a high school degree. She worked for Chevron in the accounting part of Chevron in the same building. Get this, same building, same floor, same area for 30 years. Oh my gosh, that's crazy, right? I know, right? But when I started working for Chevron, it was embarrassing to go to that building because all the women who also worked there 30 years, oh, Julie, I remember when you were 2 years old and you used to come in. And like, I'm an adult. I'm trying to be a professional here. Back up, right? It was crazy. But I mentioned earlier that my father got his degree while working for Chevron full time. So he got an associate's degree and then his bachelor's as well. And it wasn't that my parents didn't want us to go to college. They just didn't have the financial means to help. And then they weren't going to college. They didn't go to college right out of high school either. So the encouragement was, yes, learning and getting a career and growing as an adult, but it wasn't like, here's where a lot of kids go, here's your college education, here's the money, go off and do. We didn't have that. So I quickly pivoted. And quite frankly, I wasn't really big on school. I'll just admit it. I was like, I'm gonna go make me some money. But then I realized my friends from high school who went to college were getting their dream jobs and big fat paycheck while I was living paycheck to paycheck and not really enjoying what I was doing, which was in the finance business. I am not a numbers person. I'm a people person. So I was going crazy. It was at that point when watching my parents and knowing that Chevron provides, that I decided to apply for a job at Chevron. Now, I think I was ahead of my time because I had zero HR experience. Remember, I was in the finance banking industry. I landed an HR job. Now, mind you, at the bottom of the ladder, right? An HR assistant. But I did my skills-based resume and my skills-based interview answers 26 years ago to land an HR job with zero HR experience. So I'm just saying I was ahead of my game. I'm like, I should get credit for that or something. I don't know, but I landed that job. But yeah, so I think watching your parents, watching things around you, watching society shapes who you are, but you have to be okay to follow your own path and find where your real joy is. And that's what I started to pursue 26 years ago.
Well, what I thought was really interesting about your journey is also you learned as in your HR role today too, that you've realized maybe degrees aren't as significant as they once were. And we kind of spoke a little bit about that. And I'd love for you to elaborate now, like on the podcast about that to our listeners, because you mentioned like the reduced necessity. And I've seen recently a lot of posts, especially on social media, stating like 2024 is going to be the year where we're not going to be looking at, what degree you have, or if you do have a degree, we can always educate you while you work at the company. And I mean, that's really a big significant change from past experiences where if you did not have that paper.
I wish skills-based hires was supported. Well, it was for me. I was hired. I was able to BS my way through an interview. I don't know, one or the other, but I was able to show that the skills I had at a different career applied to an HR career. And I wish it was more relevant and used more back in the day. But right now, I would say in the last 5 years, it's starting to gain momentum. And 2024, hopefully we'll make that pivot in some people's brains of still thinking you need a degree. And I don't want to discount a degree. I think degrees are super important if you have the means to do it. You learn structure, you learn organization, you learn executive functioning skills sometimes. You learn about things you've never heard about. You learn how to apply some things, but not everybody has that opportunity. And you can get those same things while working a job full time or life experiences. So yeah, I mean, I think we're all, diverse individuals, right? And with diverse backgrounds, diverse journeys, and not every job requires a degree. You don't need a degree to be an HR professional. I'm not a brain surgeon. Like that needs a degree. Right? There's fields that need a degree. So why are we so focused on that's the only way that you would have knowledge to get a position? It's ludicrous. So I'm glad that we're finally making the shift. And there's a lot of companies that have already, and organizations that have made that shift and are promoting that. And people are finally catching on. And a lot of the AI tools are based on that, a lot of development programs. So you're seeing a whole skills strategy change. And I think it's going to really take off this year too, Jamie, like you said.
No, I think we're going towards the right path, definitely compared to the other, years before where you did need a degree. They wouldn't even look at you if you didn't have a degree. But I think we're all slowly starting to realize that there are certain jobs, to your point, where, yes, if you're going to go build a bridge, of course you need some sort of engineering degree or you're a brain surgeon. But there's a lot of other jobs. And even as you see in a lot of these big Fortune 500 companies or big corporations where they might have started as an engineer, but the rest of their career, they did something completely different that you did not need a degree for. It's people skills, it's branding, it's networking, it's all of the other things that you need to be good at like those, EQ level type of skill sets that are what's going to bring you to a top level manager, et cetera. And so I really like that you shared that, and that companies are looking outside of just the degree that you can offer, but the skill sets that you bring as a person. There are people that are just meant to be HR, right? And so I like that you mentioned that. Yeah. In terms of diversity and inclusion in the energy industry, it's a big topic. It is evolving. It is getting better and better, but people still see the energy industry as maybe not as diverse as they would like to see it. You are in HR. Can you tell us a little bit about maybe the challenges surrounding inclusivity when it comes to the hiring process, especially, with just in the type of work that we do, right? Field, heavy machinery, et cetera. Can you tell us a little bit about that and kind of what you've seen as, being in HR and how you try to foster that diversity and inclusion when it comes to hiring?
Yeah, diversity is critical. I mean, I'm glad that we're, in the last 5 years or so, really talking about it more than we have ever, because it's not just physical diversity, but it's diversity of thought, right? I love having conversations with people who are like me. It's super fun, but I get more out of those folks that are different, and I can have a nice Brene Brown rumble, right? And, chat about something that I'm not familiar with, or that challenges my thinking, right? That's super fun too. And that's where you grow. So we need that diversity. And hiring processes, you've got to be able to take out the human bias. Now, you're never going to be able to do it 100%. And anybody who says that they don't have a bias is lying to you, because we all do. I'll give you an example. About 1.5 years ago, I advertised a position for a talent acquisition diversity manager reporting to me. And it's ironic. So I posted the job, the resumes came back in, and we have AI tool that can mask the person's name. So it's just initials. Okay. So I didn't know if it was a male or female, right? You can maybe infer some things if you read through it. But when I immediately looked at the 100 resumes, my brain immediately shifted to, and remember, I'm the head of global talent acquisition. I should not be doing, and I'm hiring a diversity manager nonetheless. I went to, there's a lot of women here. That must be she must be young. And I'm like, what am I doing? You can't help it, right? So it's there, but I quickly realized what I was doing and paused. That's what we need people to do. But we also have tools that can really help us get out that noise, right? So we use, I mentioned it before, an AI tool on our external hiring right now that helps do just skills-based matching. And it could be skills that you don't think you likely have, but your resume reads that way, and matching it up against hundreds of thousands of other data points worldwide. Women especially, we downplay our resume and what we can do. This tool is sneaky. And he's like, no, Jamie, you got this, girl. You've got this, this, and this. And you're like, maybe I do have that, and maybe I can be matched with this job or whatever. Yeah. So that helps not only the candidate to see other opportunities, but the hiring manager to look at a broader pool of talent that they might not have thought about before, right? And then you got to have the human mind shift, like, okay, it's okay that Julie didn't have HR experience. She came from the banking industry, and they're transferable. So that's a change management opportunity we still have. But AI tool, we also have to make sure we have diverse recruiting and selection teams. Remember, not just physical, but diversity of thought, experiences, degree, all that stuff. Really make sure that makeup is diverse, and make sure that our portfolio of where we advertise is diverse, not going all to certain type of schools or conferences. You've got to have a nice mix of different things that you do: conferences, websites, universities, wherever you're recruiting from. And then I think the last thing I would say that you really need to focus on is how you write your job postings. I am always amazed when it says you have to have 25 years of experience, and it's got to be offshore on this particular platform, right? What? No, Why? Right? And if you do that type of posting, it's so narrow,
Mhm.
you're just getting the same
Type of
every
people too,
time. And
probably.
every so we've been working really hard on improving how we write our job descriptions and our postings that aren't so narrow focused, right? So that it opens up that aperture of different talent coming in. So those are some of the things you can do to help with the diversity piece for your hiring process.
I really like that you shared the AI aspect. I mean, it's really big right now, and seeing it being used in such great ways like that, I think is so important, especially in the hiring process, and being able to like not identify the identity of the person, but be able to read like their actual resume. I do think though that naturally curiosity makes you think like, is it a man? Is it a woman?
Oh yeah, your brain will go there. We're also
Yeah.
masking in university recruiting. We just started masking the college name and their
I would like
GPA
Mm.
because we were finding, and this is probably true for any company. Well, if they didn't go to Texas A&M, I'm not picking them, right? I'm not taking the LSU guy. I'm going to take the Aggie, right? That bias comes in as well. So we're like, well, we're going to strip that out. Now that was very uncomfortable for a lot of people. The name they could get their head around, but the GPA and the college name, they're like, wait, why? What? Again, that change management has to kick in, and we're getting there. It's a slow process, but we're getting there.
Mm-hmm. No, thank you for sharing. You know, you did mention a little bit about women underplaying their value, and you know, you do speaking engagements for women, and you emphasize the importance of owning one's worth and authenticity. And there was a time where you were pretty hesitant about telling your own story because you didn't have a degree when you started at Chevron, and you kind of thought that if you told other people, then they would think maybe less of you. And since that time, you've definitely changed that perspective, and it's done nothing but actually been better for you by sharing and you being authentic about it. Can you tell us about what it meant and like how in that keynote address, when you talk about embracing and inserting your value, you know, why that's so important and especially how it can help support women?
Sure. And thank you for watching that keynote. It was fun to do. And if you know Glennon Doyle's work, her book Untamed, she talks about being a cheetah. And I just love that concept. I love the animal, and I love the fact that you it's kind of embracing your worth, embracing your inner cheetah, right? And if you haven't read the book or listened to her audio of it, it's worth a read and a listen. But knowing one's worth and owning it is critical, right? And women, yes, we're terrible at it. Like men are like, yeah, I'm great, yeah, and we're like, well, we've done this and that, and we downplay everything. But we really need to amp it up. As women, we've got many reasons to downplay it, right? Society puts a lot of pressure on us, but we got to switch the narrative. And it's time for us to identify our worth, not our financial worth, which is super important too. I'm talking about the worth of what you bring to society, to the table, all of that. And that's a little bit more difficult for women to get their head around, right? We have to talk about what skills do we have? What behaviors do we have? What's our character? What are our experiences? And early in my career, as you mentioned, Jamie, I started at the bottom. I mean, a non-exempt HR assistant. Okay. And for about 10 years, even though I was getting promoted, I downplayed it a lot. I didn't tell people where I started. I also didn't tell them that I didn't go to college right out of high school. Because at that point, 26 years ago, if you didn't go to college, your degree didn't really count, right? Like my 2 degrees, I got 2 degrees back to back, bachelor's and master's. And it took years for people to recognize that those were valid, just as good as someone coming right out of college. So you have to realize the environment I was in. So I was really downplaying it and not talking about it, but I was getting promoted. So that was cool. And then I had a boss who I love still to this day, noticed that I was doing that. And I literally think, I've got to go back in my memory. I think she did hit me upside the head, like physically hit me. And a little tap, I don't want to get her in trouble. And she's retired now, so it doesn't matter. But she's like, what are you doing? I'm like, what are you talking about? She goes, why aren't you telling your true story? I'm like, what are you talking about? And she would, you're not da-da-da. And I said, because it's not valued and I feel some shame with it. Right. And if you follow Brene Brown, shame's like your worst enemy, gets in the way. We all have it, whatever. But I said, yeah, you're right. She said, you need to own that. You need to own it and celebrate it, because people are going to be inspired by you because they're having the same potential journey. And why wouldn't you be like, look what I did with not having the means to go to college, with doing it myself. We're living paycheck to paycheck, getting the promotion. What the? And I'm like, at first I'm like, yeah, whatever. And it took me a little bit, but I owned it. And now, man, I don't stop talking about it. I tell everybody, you started at a college. Yeah, well, I started at the bottom. Get you some of that. You didn't do that, did you? Huh? So I try to make it like,
Yeah.
you guys did the wrong path. I did the right path, right? And actually gives me more street cred in HR because I did every layer in the career ladder, right? So I know when I'm speaking to an HR assistant who I advocate for daily, I've helped navigate their careers to get promoted to exempt ranks and stuff, that they trust me because I've been there, right? And so you have to really own it. And as we own it and we inspire others, we need to help the other women do it too. They'll now go, oh, well, she did it. Where she's at, I can do it too. She's owning it. This is cool. There's a little club, right? We really should take a moment and celebrate the women or the woman that we've become, right? And the obstacles we've overcome, like I have, right? And the silent battles we fought. I told you a few where I was really ashamed because people were making somewhat feel that way too, right? Like, you didn't get a college degree. And the hard decisions we had to make. And remember our worth, and that we're worth it as well.
Everyone loves an underdog. And I think that's what makes your story so awesome is your background and the fact that you didn't come from a traditional path. Like, those are the kind of stories I think people want to hear anyways. And so we just kind of get out of our mindset of we're going to be judged because, we didn't have the traditional path. But when you share your story, you realize that's what people are rooting for. That's makes you more inspiring than like, oh, I got into the best college and I went to Harvard and now I'm here.
My parents paid for everything and all that, which is a path too. I'm not trying to.
It is. But we all love an underdog.
Yeah, one way is not the right way, but don't make someone feel bad if they didn't have the path that you had, that society thinks is the right path, right? Everybody has whatever, and we just got to help lift each other up on that.
Yeah, for sure. So we wanted a little bit of your advice, with over 3 decades in HR.
I'm old now too.
What is the common obstacle that you observe, hinder individuals from, achieving their desired goals or the promotions that they seek? You've got extensive experience over years, especially managing talent and being in HR and seeing, young talent comes in, they're excited, they want to be the CEO, and then
that's so true.
And then it kind of just dies a little bit through, I would say, like mid-career. There's a lot of things that you face where you've got the ambition and you just kind of, there's challenges that you face, specifically women of color, and definitely kind of the diverse talent. Can you tell us a little bit about kind of what you've seen the challenges be and how they can advance in their professional careers if they are feeling like they're not as motivated?
Yeah. I keep thinking of books. Every time you say something, I think of another book. I got to stop reading so many books maybe, but there's a book called, by the way, all the books are next to me so I can see them, but it's called The Second Mountain. And it's about, you go to college for a degree, you go into your career, and then you realize 10, 15 years, you're like, oh, this is not what I wanted. And you shift. And what's your second mountain that you're going to climb? So it happens to all of us, right? Mine just happened earlier in my life, right? Went from finance banking to HR and just knew that was my superpower. I got to be around people. Otherwise, I don't feel joy every day. But as women, I believe, I've mentioned this multiple times, that it's our obligation to lift up, to elevate and support each other. And we're terrible at doing it. And I see it from the early young girls, college, and career. We've got to stop doing that. And it's got to stop when they're young. We've got to teach our children to help each other and have our boys. I have 2 boys, so I'm helping them be allies for women or underrepresented minorities as well. But my favorite saying, and Jamie, you would have heard this in my keynote, from Frances Fry's book, Unleashed, is you have to be the ambassador of someone else's awesomeness. I mean, like, you can freaking mic drop right there. Okay.
Yeah.
Be the ambassador of someone's awesomeness. Just knowing that someone else is awesome and recognizing it and promoting that for other women is huge. I love that saying. I wish I can get a cape or a badge or something that goes with that, because you have to sit with it. I love the statement, but everyone is awesome in their own way, right? And as women, we need to understand that about ourselves and about each other, right? And we should not be in competition with one another. We really should not. We should be helping each other. So that brings me into another point that I often make, that during the Obama administration, the female staffers came up with this concept of the amplification strategy. What does that mean? Well, this happens still to me to this day, but when I was embedded in the business before, which is most of my career, I was embedded in the business, reporting to the business, not to HR, and sitting at a table mostly with men. My voice wasn't heard all the time, even though I'm an extrovert, I'm confident, I'm not shy, I have a strong voice. Sometimes I would say something, 5 minutes later, the man said something, exactly what I just said. And it was like, he was brilliant. And I'm sitting there going, what just happened? And I remember I had a leader one time, he said, Julie, oftentimes he was giving me feedback. Oftentimes it looks like you're repeating yourself, or you get frustrated or something. And I said, do you want to know why? He's like, yeah. I said, no, do you really want to know why that's happening? And I explained to him what was happening. He says, no, that doesn't happen. Yeah. Okay. Let's go on to the next couple of meetings and you pay attention. And he said, okay. Because he was really wanted to learn. And it took a couple meetings, and then the moment it happened to me in the meeting, he turned and looked at me. Nobody knew what we were eyeing each other about, but he gave me like a look like, oh, I just realized what just happened. It happened to you. And that's going in his mind, right? And he amplified my voice. He said, oh, Johnny, thanks for reinforcing what Julie's idea a couple minutes ago. I almost started crying. I was like, yes, that's what you need. But the Obama administrative staffers, that's what they were doing, amplifying their female voices. Because if you amplify mine, we're amplifying everybody's. So you restate what Jamie has said, let's say, and then you credit Jamie for it. Amplify and be the ambassador of someone else's awesomeness. Those are two tangible ways, right, to elevate, support each other as women.
When you told me about this, I was like, oh my gosh, we have to have that shared on the podcast. I love the strategy and how simple it is. That's so simple for people to do. And it's something we can all recognize. Yeah. And I think it has such an impact. And so I just thank you so much for sharing that. And I think it's just such great advice. To close, we wanted to talk a little bit about family.
I'll tell you one other thing, though.
Yes.
One other thing with that. Yeah. I read a meme the other day and I wanted to share it with you guys. And it says, I got to read it. I'm starting a girl gang of women aggressively supporting other women. So hands up if you want in, because we're going to get enough people. And if we do, we're totally getting jackets. Like, start a girl gang and we're getting jackets for it. And I'm like, can we bling it out? This is going to be awesome. I'm like, oh my God, I love that saying. But it's true, right?
Yeah, boy, that just shows like we're in it together. Like, I want to be a part of this, and I want us all to look like we're a part of it, and we're all helping each other. Like, I want people to recognize that. And I think that's the one thing when we talk about women empowering women, that's not there. Like, we don't, some women don't want to be seen as that. They just want to get their career. They want to get their promotion, right? And we leave people behind when we think like that. So, no, I think that's just really, really great. And thank you for sharing. So just to go back to, you said that you had 2 boys. Your husband also works for Chevron. One of the biggest things always asked is like, how do you manage? How do you balance that? How have you been able to excel in your career with having your children and your husband too working? Can you give us a glimpse into what it was like, especially in the early days, feel like that's always the hardest when the kids are little. And you also moved around a lot. You had a stint in Africa as well. So your boys had traveled with you. So can you tell us a little bit about that? Any advice you may have for those listening that might be new parents?
Yeah. So I don't believe there's balance ever, right? You figure out what's working on any given day and making sure you couple that with self-care at the same time, right? Which is huge. I'm big on health as well because I've had significant health issues over the last 10 years. So I have to be able to focus on that too. So having a support system at home is critical. So a couple of things about that. My husband and I, from the moment we got together, we had the conversation about our careers because we're both ambitious people, which is not a good combination sometimes, right? Especially when you have children, because someone's going to fall back at some point, right? Be the trailing spouse or whatever. And we both said, we made, pinky swear, we're going to be okay with whoever's leading and whoever's lagging, but it's going to be a mixture. It's never going to be one or the other, right? We're going to help each other, and we will make sure we don't make career decisions that hinders the other's career. I'll give you an example. When we were asked to go to Africa, that was for me. HR called me and said, hey, we've got this opportunity. They told me the job, and I was, oh my God, my dream job, but they didn't tell me where it was. They were sneaky about that, right? They're like, because Angola wasn't on my radar. I wanted to go on an expat assignment, but I wasn't ready to go to a third world country with 2-year-old and a 4-year-old, right? And 2 careers. But after we looked into it and did our research and all of that, we said, yeah, let's go. But when I was asked for the job, I said, what do you have for my husband? We will not take a step back. We will go lateral. He can go lateral, but he will not take a step back. This job has to help his career as well. And we've stuck to that as a unit over the 26 years, or I guess he's got maybe 23 together. And Chevron has acknowledged that and supported that as well. But we know that we have to own our careers and help them understand what our give and takes are. So you have to have those conversations early on. And then with the 2 littles, it was much harder. But it was those days where, every day, kid's sick. Okay, let's get out our calendars. At that point, it was a BlackBerry. I'm totally aging myself now. Get out your BlackBerry and figure out who's meeting. It's not more important, but can't really be missed. Right. And that's how we would negotiate, because we don't have family in Texas. It was just us. But going to Africa, we brought my mother-in-law with us. That's the only way we could survive in a environment that was not only a 12, 14-hour day working, but a 1 to 4 hour commute daily. Right. So it was a lot. And so we needed that support. And we were the first to bring a family member in Chevron, working for Chevron, to our expat assignment in Angola. It was very controversial at the time, but we broke ground on that one too. And it was, the Angolan government was like, yeah, it's grandma, of course. Stamp, visa, good, go. She got her visa before we did. It was Chevron at first was like, well, there's a liability, blah, 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 whatever. We couldn't have made it happen without her. So it's having those conversations early, being honest with each other, being equals. If my husband was thinking that we were equals, or not only in our careers, but at home with changing diapers and everything, I don't know where I would be today. I really don't. So you really need that life partner.
I don't know a better way to end the podcast than really talking about what it means for your family and that family life dynamic, because to your point, it's very important on who you choose, and that is your support system, and it's your cheerleader. And so thank you for sharing. And I am just so happy to be able to just have met you and had you on the podcast. Your story is so inspirational, and the way that you came from the very bottom and literally like assistant level, you made it all the way to where you are today. And it's, I think a lot of people listening, it'll really inspire them, and those that may be questioning what they're doing right now. Maybe they're not in school yet, in college, they still got the opportunity. And like, you're never too old for any of that. Like, you can always get a degree at any time, right?
Yeah. Anytime you want. Yeah, I'm ready. Let's go back and do it again for sure. I had the energy, but now I'm just getting tired. So I don't know. I'm at the tail end of my career. You guys are still in the early times, but yeah, never too old to do something different.
Yep. So thank you so much, Julie, for coming on and sharing your story with us today.
Well, I appreciate the time. It was great chatting with both of you as well.
If you like this podcast, please like, subscribe, follow us on Instagram, LinkedIn, and we have a new sister podcast, Energy If You Know You Know. So please tune into that too. Check you on the next one.